Buenas tardes, querido viviente de Zamboanga. Welcome to another edition of No Limit. Ya ayer ya tenía un especial No Limit por causa del visitada de la reina de España, Su Majestad Reina Sofía. Y ahora también, junto a este día, Kanatun, si Father Ángel Calvo, que aparece el visitado de la reina aquí en la ciudad de Zamboanga, tenía que hacer para visitar con el mega proyecto de Father Calvo, ¿no? Father, buenos días contigo, buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Y bienvenidos a este programa.
Gracias, Ronnie.
Sí, tú estás encabezado con el grupo de Sabida, pero tú hablas de cosa más de Sabida, Father.
Well, Sabida actually is consortium of four NGOs, 3 in Zamboanga and 1 in Basilan. It means the Zamboanga Basilan Integrated Development Alliance. That started about 5 years ago, when we had an offer from the Spanish government to have what we call a convenio, which is a big project in consortium also with Bicol, some regions in Bicol. So we formed this consortium integrating the work on peace and development also in Basilan. So it's composed of the Katilimban, which is working basically with the urban poor of Zamboanga. It has been famous for the housing projects, but has other projects of street children center, the center for the children of the victims of child trafficking, for microcredit, women, health, etc., but concentrated in the urban poor of Zamboanga.
So, este programa, padre, como lo mismo, el manera que te puede ayudar a ustedes para address el issue del economic problems dito también ng mga komunidad.
See, basically, the 4 NGOs are working around this issue of strengthening what we call now the human security, the economic and the social security of the people. As I mentioned, that is Katilimban for Zamboanga urban poor, but also the ROOF is associated to WIMSU, that had the concern and work specifically on the rural communities, on the agricultural development, basically on the organic farming. This is a center, famous center in Buñao, that was formerly the novitiate of the Claricians in Buñao. So they are working in all the barrios of Buñao area, training the people to utilize the organic farming, and there is a training center, and encouraging the food security that you said in the East Coast. And then supported by Peace Advocacy Zamboanga, that integrates all the peace, education, and conflict transformation in all aspects of development. This is why we try to integrate always the peace elements and peace education and overcoming the conflict with the development and support of the human security.
Padre, quiero una pregunta contigo, ¿no? ¿Qué la tú, que sabes tú estás en cabeza con este grupo, qué la tú ya puedes trabajar para buscar la ayuda del gobierno de España para darle fondo para este diferentes proyectos que ya inauguró ayer la reina Sofía?
Actually, we have been working with Cooperación Española for many years. You know? Actually, the NGOs in the third world cannot apply directly help from the government so-called Cooperación Española, or the Agencia Española de Cooperación, but through another NGO, a Spanish NGO. We have been working for many years, even the time I was working in Basilan, through Manos Unidas. Manos Unidas is the Catholic agency for development in the third world, and it has been helping us in the small projects, from water to some development projects in the communities in Basilan. But that was an opportunity for bigger projects, you know, and that is why we started the main project was the housing. The housing in Sinunuk, Katilimban. Actually, Katilimban means community. So we try to build the community, but the number one problem working with the urban poor, as you know, is to find a place and to develop and plant, as they say in Chabacano, planta casa, no? Planta un casa. And we started with the first community of 200 houses.
Y más de ese siguro, padre, de lang al plantal casa, sino donde kailangan kita poner la infraestructura de economía para soportar con mga pobre también, mantener dila por la vida, ¿verdad?
That's it. But this is there are the basic elements and what we call basic services with many urban poor and not so urban. There are many rural poor. You know? This is why we integrate the urban in Zamboanga city, the population with the rural.
Are you a purely NGO? Is this a purely NGO project, or do you work in coordination with government in these projects?
Well, basically an NGO. This is basically an NGO. We have to relate naturally with some agencies of the government, but this is why, like housing, like water, in Basilan especially, and many other projects on health and livelihood, and but basically it is the organization of the NGO, and with the many a series of programs. Now, as I said, we have come out with the new structure after the convenio, what we call working on human security. Human security that is composed of two levels. One, it is the economic security from food production to the rural people, those who have a farm, how to maximize the and utilize organic farming for food production, and the urban, how to train to produce something. This is why the microcredit and micro enterprises for the urban, and the basic services. Basic services, which is housing, shelter, and water in many areas, you know, urban and rural areas still in Zamboanga and Basilan. And the second, it is peace and security, together with the social harmony among the different cultural groups, and this is why we have the interreligious solidarity movement for peace, integrating always the peace and the peaceful relationship among the different groups with the human security that the poor, especially the poor, need.
Sabi to Father, you mentioned something about human trafficking. That problem of human trafficking will not even exist here in this country if we do not have people who are displaced because of poverty in the rural areas, who lose people who lose their farms, and they end up sending all their children to the main centers or the urban centers to find jobs. No? So, so how does your particular group come up with interventions on how we can prevent human trafficking, or the human diaspora, so to speak, to the urban centers?
We realize that this is becoming a very dangerous phenomenon, especially in our area, for the conditions of Zamboanga being the very important port going to neighboring countries. This is why Zamboanga is one of the most significant points for the human trafficking. In our interventions, we are first of all a campaign. We have started that campaign anti-human trafficking, especially on children, minors, for the last 12 years, and we have maybe the national coordinator of the anti-child trafficking for the whole country within us. You know, it is the coordinator of our campaign, and we have a very strong campaign to the barangays, to every community.
So you're involved in information programs?
Very much, very much. In all the barangays now, they have, we have been continuous now, the barangay campaign of what does it mean, what are the elements, and how we can prevent, and how we can denounce. But the second element is how to take care to take care of the victims, especially the children, the minors, because this is the only center basically in the whole of Mindanao. We have victims, they are caught in Zamboanga, but they are victims coming from Marawi, from Cagayan de Oro, from the norte, del sur, the neighboring islands, practically because the issue, one of the most delicate issues in the human trafficking is who takes care of the victims, you know. It is not enough to be caught and be sent home, maybe the adults, but the children, some of them are maybe the parents and the family are responsible directly or indirectly of their trafficking.
More than just taking care of the victims, because I know importante si father, no? Kaya sabi to, aquí sentro kita del como exit point to other countries, so naturalmente todo itong mga human trafficking victims sa kikata na syudad, no? Pero more than that siguro, father, how do we address the issue of people or even parents trying to make their children available for human trafficking? Simply because of their economic condition.
That's it. That is this is a social reason. You know, this is not we have to cure. You know, the sickness, but we have to go deeper into the causes. You know, the basic main cause of the trafficking, the human trafficking, is poverty and the needs. The insecurity that we call now, insecurities of the families and the social community, and this is why while we have to cure the victims, which is very important and urgent, the whole society has to establish to cure the causes, you know, to establish the remedies to the cause, which is the basic insecurity and poverty and needs of the majority of the families, that they cannot see other alternative to risk. It's a risk to go to looking for a job somewhere else without knowing exactly what are the conditions of that job.
Father Carlo, I know that you're very familiar with Basilan because you've served there for so many years na Basilan. Siguro po dyan kita yung second home niya ka.
No, that was still my first love.
Yeah, your first love, no? In fact, I think you were one of those who started the first radio station in Basilan.
That was the radio station.
Basilan is an agricultural area, and yet it saddens me to think that the potential of Basilan really shooting off from being a very productive agricultural area is torn by the conflict that is happening in the area right now, no? Embes kita kay pwede man strengthen ang agrikultura na kapag nito do tiene trabajo, ito do embes do amal para na Basilan para buka trabaho siguro, mas marami de Basilan na Basilan, tanda na ito mga lugar, y después, el resulta liya mo lang kay revolution, o la busaya pa trabaha, pero el potensyal del Basilan hindi ta pwede kita realiza, no? What do you think should be really done? What effort should be done by government ba, or by even the private sector or the citizens in the province so that they can realize Basilan for what it is?
I think it's very complex. Basilan, the socio-political and economic complexity of the history of Basilan, I think it's very deep. But trying to analyze and being so rich and so wealthy as we know Basilan, but we cannot forget that Basilan agricultural land has been controlled by big companies, you know, and I think to me this is the missed opportunity that we had, you know, offering those big plantations to the agrarian reform beneficiaries.
Yeah, but the agrarian reform has been implemented in Basilan, and yet it has not really worked very well.
The agrarian reform has been very badly implemented. You know, this is the problem. This is one of the big problems. You know, the transition to the agrarian reform, because that program had been well implemented, and now we will have almost 15% of the working laboring population of Basilan in one of the best conditions, even a mixture of cultures and sectors in the working labor of the main plantations. But this is one of the problems, you know, how to accompany the transition period so that the new beneficiaries will continue benefiting really of the big wealthy plantations of Basilan. And the other one is the conflict, really, you know. But I think what we need...
Some are saying, Father, that it was wrong for government to even implement the agrarian reform program in Basilan, considering that when they handed over the land to the people or to the poor in Basilan, they did not have the funds to develop their land area. Mas bueno po ang alcalde ko doon pa kompanya, at least regular tarisibi el sueldo mga trabahador. No, but I don't know.
Basically, I think my analysis is basically two levels. One is capacity level, you know, the change of mentality, being a worker or being an owner of the company, you know, and to be able to exercise the management skills that the company needs. That's it. That was not a company, I'm afraid, you know. The transition of being a laborer to be a partner and being owner of the company, you know, that needs a psychological change and a training, accompaniment to change that mentality, to run properly a company which is not a small farm, you know, and second, the incentive, the economic incentives in terms of how to cover the first years according to the production that they were making. So these two for me were not properly implemented, and this is why at one point or another failed most of the big companies. And I think this is to me one of the great missed opportunities of Basilan progress. And the other is again who control the other cultivated land and what are the products. We need a really strong political will to implement the laws and to implement the property and incentives for everybody to continue the farming that we need.
If you really look at the situation right now, como por ejemplo en Basilan, no? Después de darle con el mga pobre el agrarian reform, el terreno nila, pero no hay sila poder, no hay sila el fondo, el entreño para man-develop nila ese mismo terreno que ya apodera sila por medio del agrarian reform, they end up selling this to warlords in the area who que tiene bastante fondo para encharcar también con todo este terreno en el lugar. No? But so what we have right now, we have discontented farmers who end up being Abu Sayyaf, or rebels or bandidos que dal mga siyembador because you have people who take advantage of people who sell their agrarian reform lands to certain landlords.
This is the risk of not implementing properly that change. It is a sociological change from being working for the master and being yourself in charge of managing your farm. You know, if that is not well implemented, the risk is to look for another manager, you know, to get at least the benefit, immediate benefit. This is the big risk of the agrarian reform, not only in Basilan, I would say in many places of the Philippines and many other countries, that if that is not well implemented, the risk is going worse, going down to the becoming laborers again, and the insecurity of what will happen in our future.
So part of your intervention as an organization, Father, is to also help out in agriculture. How does the Spanish, what assistance is the Spanish government giving insofar as these interventions to give proper training to small-time farmers to really be able to organize themselves into cooperatives perhaps and be able to develop their land area into productive agricultural lands?
Both. We are also working with agrarian reform communities. You know, in Basilan, this is one of our best experiences of Nagdilab. I am the chairman, but one of the best experiences of working with farmers is working precisely with agrarian reform communities. We can mention one of the best. I'd like to mention Tehran. You know, they have been demolished practically because of the conflict and the war, and it is being organized in a beautiful community with our help, training, and especially some incentives. We can offer some loans, private and even for the company, to the capacity building at all levels, the socio, even the organizational and even economic, with some farming skills and some services like the water in Santa Clara, the water services in Baluno. So we are working with some of these agrarian reform communities, supporting the basic needs or supporting the organizational setup, and also some skills, and some working with women, health, water, etc., so that the community feel secure. The word we are using now, we prefer to use is the human security, the security at all levels, the socio, the political, the economic security, the family securities. So working at all these levels, educational, so capacity, security. So the community at different levels grow in the security, so overcome that sense of insecurity that we suffer when we say that we are poor.
Okay. Dito yung proyekto na sinunok, for example, Father, you are working with the indigenous communities yaton, conformista. How are we, what are your strategies to try to bring more or less a sense of pride into who they are as a people, so that they could be integrated also with mainstream society and be a more productive part of the community?
So this is why the whole strategy of building, as I said, we are katilimban, it means building a community. The people think that we are building houses, which is what you can see, you know? But the real purpose is to build a real community, mixed communities as they are in Zamboanga, you know, from Visayas to Chabacanos to Tausugs and Samals and Yakans, as they are, you know, they are living in their urban poor communities, and the housing is the number one, to have an opportunity to build the house. To your question, the sense of pride, the families themselves have to build their own house, and that is the strongest sense of identity and pride that they have, that we provide the materials and the land and the services of water and electricity, but it's the family, in the poor as they are, they have to find time on the weekends and even help from the other neighbors and relatives, but they are the ones who plan physically their own house. Equal, we give them the design, and if they need training, we provide the training, but they own their own structure and their own house. And that is the best way to build a sense of belongingness in the community with their neighbors, and then all the services.
Does government more or less help out in trying to identify areas where you can put up these projects? Like, for example, right now, some of our communities are located in the seashore, and identify, say, high-risk area, seashores yaton ng mga tidal wave, no? So where can does government even come in to recommend areas where they can relocate and put housing communities for the poor?
But I would say at the moment, not with us. You know, we have been operating on our own, basically from the identification of the terrain, from the site development and the building of the infrastructure, and all the other services, because there are other services of preschool, the multipurpose, the center for livelihood, you know, training and production center for the women. We have been on our own, basically.
So how would you come up with a more ideal situation wherein you have a cooperative system between government and our NGOs, so that ese mga proyekto nila tamen sila Calidad Canto del Mar, de Timora, bien bonito el proyecto, después venga un grande tidal wave, todo destrozado, ¿no? So, how do you come up with a cooperation between government and your NGO so that you can identify a more ideal place for a relocation for these people?
You ask me how. I mean, I only express maybe our willingness, you know, and maybe that is the ideal in some way. I do not know if we will be able to reach that level. I think I still believe that the original idea was to work together with the government and the many institutionalities that we have in Zamboanga, like the university, you know. I think there is the idea, the know-how, the technical know-how. There are many in Zamboanga who can offer, you know. The NGO should offer with the capacity and the help that they can get from the foreign support, but also that is the dream. Hopefully one day we can work together and put in the resources that we can have, from the land to the organizational setup and the construction and the infrastructures and the technical know-how. I think this is the ideal that we have to work on.
Yeah. Father, what is the significance El Visitado de la Reina Sofia para diya lang inaugura ko itong mga proyekto dito goes to show the importance of your project, but what is its significance? How do you feel with the visit of the Queen kung itong mga proyekto tayo dito?
Number one, we feel that this is a moment of recognition. We know that we have been working in a very humble way with the community.
For 9 years, right?
For many years, you know, more than 12 years. We started the house in the first housing project in 1999, I would say, year 2000 basically. So we have been working more than 12 years, you know, in this housing and many other projects, as I said, with Basilan and the rural areas and health and women, livelihood and many other areas. But this is the most spectacular, the communities, of course. But the number one is the recognition. Recognition on the part of the Spanish government, that they have recognized that really the project has produced, you know, the objective of building communities, you know, with all the components of security. Again, you know, we can see where a few years ago you could see only coconuts. You can see families established in a well-organized community with all the basic needs that they can get together. This is a recognition, but also it's a sense of pride that we, the humble people, need, you know, after all the effort, because there has been the effort we call sweat equity, and really sweat, you know, have been built by them and worked by the groups together with the NGO. But this is the recognition that the sense of pride that it is being recognized by. But we hope also the local community to accept and recognize. This is a simple community within their own effort, really little by little building that dream, which is to live in harmony, secure in the family, in a community with the basic services. This is to us the ideal. We would like also to present a kind of a model. Maybe it's a little bit you know, too much to expect to build that models, you know, but in our objective is to present some models of communities who come from the squatter area with the insecurity of being ejected. Some of them were ejected, you know, and little by little, with the little help from an NGO, are able to develop into a community organized with the basic education, health, livelihood being basically covered, and what we call empower communities, that they feel
you mentioned something about community involvement, Father, and I think that's a very key word that you mentioned there. If a project is supposed to be a success kanaton, we are mas bonito gani kaya Beniki El Reyna kanaton, pero mas importante si el mismo komunidad dali recognition kung este proyekto ayuda kung este proyekto. Let me ask you, and I would like to put this question to you straight, point blank. Is the church involved in helping out in this project, or is this an NGO that Father Calvo is working on alone by himself with some social activists. Is the church investing in projects like this?